Hold my beer. Hold my beer now.
Okay, I got it.
Watch this. Woo-hoo! Get some of that.
Happy Father's Day. Yeah, you know, I mean, I want to celebrate dads today. I really am proud to be a dad. I'm proud of my father. I'm proud of many of you as fathers. And I want to celebrate dads. In case you didn't notice, we have treats for you today. We have some snacks that you can get on your way out. And we wanted to be healthy, so we covered all of the main food groups. We have meat, as in beef jerky, and snacks, or desserts, as in moon pies and Twizzlers. And you just take those, and you don't, I mean, there's a full meal right there for all of you dads, because we want to celebrate that. We want to appreciate that, because I don't think we really understand what a miracle it is when a dad gets it right. I mean, it's just amazing. And so if you have a dad or you are a father and you get it right from time to time, we want to celebrate that, because we know the odds are against us. We know that everything in us leans toward being an idiot. And it's, you know, I don't mean to indict an entire gender, but because I am a man and I am a father, I can tell you that it's true. That you put us in groups and our IQ actually goes down. I mean, if you want an example of just what idiots men can be, just Google why women live longer than men. And you will see countless pictures of the stupidity of men in action. For example, this picture of these guys in an inflatable swimming pool with a power cord running into the pool, and they're floating a power strip that is going over to a table. And what's on that table? Is it a computer? Is it a toaster? Who thought this was a good idea? But these three guys, drinking a bunch of Miller Lights, said, sure, let's electrify our pool. Or take this picture, for example, of this knucklehead. He's jumping out of a second-story window into a pool, which in and of itself is not really a great idea, but he's riding a broom while he's doing it. The only good thing about this idea is that when he hits the water riding the broom, he will be unable to ever procreate. He will be the last in his line. But you know, if you really want to see men at their stupidest, ask them to fix something. Like, here's a picture of some men. They're at the top of a 10-story building. And at some point, they decided, we need to get to something that's off the side of the building. So one of us, and I don't know who it was that said, I'll do it, climbed over the side, is standing on two pieces of thin rebar, and they're holding him by his shirt collar while he fixes whatever he needs to fix. And then there's this moron who decided to take his extension ladder, and because it wasn't tall enough to reach the top of the chimney, he went across the alley to another building, put the extension ladder across the building, across the alley, so he could get up there. And if you're a man, you know exactly what he's thinking. Well, there wasn't any way to get up there, so I thought this would work. And then there's this guy working on his truck. Okay, I'm going to put my truck up on two wheels and put two sticks under it, and then I'm just going to do the repairs I need. But none of these idiots compare to these two guys. Who thought this was a good idea? Okay, you just get down on your hands and knees, and I'll take a circular saw, and I'm going to trim this board. Gives a whole new meaning to plumber's crack. It's a miracle anytime any of us get it right as dads. And today, I want to help you out. I want to help us out as fathers. Because just as we think, well, we can't fix that. We can't fix stupid. I believe that we can. And we can avoid being idiots as fathers if we're willing to be wise. And I know if you're like me as a dad, you need all the help that you can get. And so today, I want to offer you some wisdom for us as fathers on Father's Day. But before we talk about that, would you pray with me? Father in heaven, I would ask that the words of my mouth and the meditations of my heart would be pleasing in your sight. That you would use your words spoken by your servant and anointed by your Spirit to challenge us to be wise, not just as moms and dads, but as sons and daughters. Pray for that, for myself and my family, for all of us here. For I ask that in Jesus' name. Amen. 6 or 9 months ago, when we were planning this series, I went through the book of Proverbs, and I located a proverb that I thought was very helpful to me. It was good advice. It was wise advice for me as a father, and I had planned to share that. And so it was kind of in the agenda. We prepared the team for this Sunday, and I came to Monday when I normally start to do the real kind of fine-tuning on this message, and I looked at that verse and I said, I wonder if there's other things in the book of Proverbs that would help us understand how to be wise as dads. So I reread the book of Proverbs and I began to study what it said to fathers, because I thought, what perhaps many of you thought, that the book of Proverbs was filled with perhaps hundreds of instructions, of pieces of advice, of wise counsel for fathers, for parents, in relating to their children. I thought it would repeat over and over sort of the theme of Proverbs chapter 13. If you don't know what Proverbs chapter 13 says, you've probably heard it. It basically says, spare the rod and spoil the child. I expected to find countless verses that reinforced the importance of parents disciplining their children. By the way, just as a side note, a footnote to this, the Hebrew word for rod there, if you want to apply this verse to your parenting, you also have to see how it's used in the 23rd Psalm. Because in the 23rd Psalm, the same Hebrew word appears. It says, even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil. Your rod, same word as Proverbs 13, your rod and your staff do what? They don't punish me, they comfort me. Discipline is a comfort, and that's what I found. I found as I read through the book of Proverbs that the only advice that it had for fathers was to discipline their children as the Lord disciplines us. As God disciplines us as a loving father, we should lovingly discipline our children. And it only says it 6 times. In the entire book of Proverbs, there's only 6 instructions for fathers in terms of disciplining or being wise with their children. But what I found this week, as I was reading and studying the book of Proverbs, is that there are almost 10 times as many verses addressed to the parent-child relationship, not to fathers or mothers, but to children. Most of the instruction about the parent-child relationship is instructed to us not as parents, but as children. It sounds like Proverbs chapter 23. Proverbs chapter 23 is a theme that is repeated throughout the book of Proverbs. In Proverbs chapter 23, down to verse 22, it says, listen to the fathers who gave you life, and do not despise your mothers when they are old. Buy truth and do not sell it, wisdom and instruction and insight as well. It goes on to say that a father who has a righteous child has great joy, and a man who fathers a wise son rejoices in him. Make your father and mother rejoice, and help and hope that the woman who gave you birth would be joyful. All of the instruction, the majority of the instruction in the book of Proverbs is not how to be a good parent, but how to be a good child. And what I realized this week as I was reviewing and studying the book of Proverbs is the secret to being a wise father is being a wise son. You want to be a great mother? Be a great daughter. You want to be a great parent? Be a great child. The genius of this just blew my mind. The idea that the instruction of Proverbs is not, here's how to be a great parent. The instruction of Proverbs is, if you want to be a great parent, first of all, be a great child. Be a great son or daughter. And let me share the genius of this with you. And let me drop some secret knowledge on you this morning. And it's not so secret. I think most of us know that it is not good parenting strategy to parent by saying, do as I do, do as I say, not as I do. Do as I say, not as I do is flawed parenting strategy. And you know why? Because your children are watching you. They're watching us all the time. And you know what impacts them more than the speeches we give them, that the rules that we lay down, that the things that we instruct them? What impacts our children is not what we say, but what we do. Parenting is modeling. Parenting is a visual aid. It is caught more than it is taught. If all of the things that we say to our children about the things that we believe, or the priorities that we have, or the values that we have, are not backed up by how we live, then they will totally disregard them. What is the Ten Commandments? In the Ten Commandments, it talks about the relationship between parents and children. How does the Ten Commandments outline how we are to behave in our family relationships? If Dr. Phil was writing the Ten Commandments, he would say, parents should be wise, and parents should be gracious, and parents should be committed. And the commandment would be to be committed and wise parents. But what does it say? It says, honor your father and your mother, that it might go well with you in the land. Honor your father and your mother, so that your children will see how to honor you. So that they will learn by your example, so that they will imitate you, because whether you like it or not, they will imitate you. They will imitate you in the way that you treat your parents. They will grow up to treat you the same way. Honor your mother and your father, so that through the course of your life, your children will see what it is like to honor their parents. You see the genius of this? You see the brilliance of this? It's because not all of us will be parents. There are some of us who by choice or by destiny will never have the opportunity to be parents. And while we might not be a parent, we will always be a child. We will always be someone else's son or daughter. We have been that our whole lives and will be that our whole lives. And the first priority is to be great at that. Even if we become a parent, we're not parents our entire lives. Now I am a father my entire life. I became a father at conception, and I will be a father until the day that I die. But the responsibility for raising my children was limited to a season when they were living under my roof. I got some news for you. Here's some more secret knowledge. If you're raising a family and you're losing your mind and you're chasing your tail and you're a shuttle service that just takes your kids from one place to another, and you think this will never end, this season too shall pass. Because there's something on the future. If you survive raising your children, there's a thing called being an empty nester, and it is awesome. It is amazing to be able to come home and go, hey, you want to go out to dinner? You want to stay in? What do you want to watch on TV? Where do you want to go? You want to take all our clothes off and walk around naked? We can do it. We don't have children here anymore, and it's fantastic. There's a season in our life when we are parents, and that does not define us. What defines us is the kind of children we are, not the kind of parents we are. In the Hebrew culture, in the time of the Proverbs, when a child, particularly a son, became 12 years old, he was called a bar mitzvah. He was called a son of the law. And in the eyes of the community, at 12, a young boy was now responsible for his decisions and his morality. At the age of 12, so that a majority of our life, 80% of our life, is spent not with the responsibility of being defined as a mom or a dad. While we may have children our entire lives and be fathers and mothers our entire lives, it does not define us. What defines us is what kind of children we are, how we treat our mother and father. It is how we become great parents. You want parenting wisdom? Here it is. You want to be a great parent? Be a great child. Because you know what else it means? It means you break the chain. It means you break the chain. Because I know that if the sample that I am aware of this community is true, and it is, that many of you are processing as adults the wounds that you received from wounded parents. That you are carrying in your soul the scars of the dysfunctions of the home that you were raised in. That many of you were treated in ways that created in you pathology and dysfunction that is the latent results of being raised by broken parents. And for you, the idea of honoring your mother and father means coming to terms with the wounds that they inflicted on you. And this is hard work. Make no mistake about it. Understanding that we are who we are because of who our parents were, for better or for worse. That the wounds that they inflicted on us are a mechanism that strengthens us as adults. And coming to terms with that is part of what it means to honor our parents. And it's part of what it means to break the chain. Can I talk to you as dads? If you're here and you're a young dad today, I want to talk to you. The rest of you can listen while I talk to the fathers, particularly the fathers who are paying forward to their children the wounds that were put on them from their fathers. Man up. Grow up, man. Don't pay forward. For the sake of your children, do not pay forward the wounds that were put on you from a wounded father. Break the chain. Let me give you some advice from two wise counselors. Their names are Don Henley and Glenn Fry of the Eagles. And they wrote a famous song called Get Over It. And this is the first verse. I turn on the tube and what do I see? A whole lot of people crying, "Don't blame me." They point their crooked little fingers at everybody else, spend all their time feeling sorry for themselves. Victim of this, victim of that. Your mama's too thin, your daddy's too fat. Get over it. Get over it. Oh, you're whining and crying and pitching a fit. Get over it. Get over it. Deal with it. Now, it's that I can say to the men, I realize that's harder than just deciding, okay, I'm just going to forget about it. It's not forgetting about it, it's dealing with it. And the wisdom of the Proverbs is much more gentle than Henley and Fry are. Look at Proverbs chapter 23. Proverbs chapter 23, what does it say? It says, listen to the father who gave you life. Listen to your father. It doesn't say, listen to your father if they are wise. Or it doesn't say, listen to your father if they are kind. It doesn't say, listen to your father when they are right. It says, listen to your father who gave you life. Listen to the things that person, that your parents put in you as a child. Go back in your life and understand that who you are today is because of them, for better or for worse. Come to the point where you can say, I am who I am because of you. And thank you for that. Listen to your father who gave you life. It also says, and don't despise your mother when she is old. Don't look at your mother and say, you didn't love me enough. You didn't give me enough attention. You didn't defend me when I needed defending. Or as I interpret that verse right now, my wife and I are going to spend the next week with our aging parents. And it's tough. It's tough for me to go and see my mom now that she is old and she needs me. She needs me to be strong. She needs me to be the one who she can lean on. Don't despise your parents because they grow old, or when you reflect on their life and how they shortchanged you. Verse 23 of Proverbs chapter 23 is really out of place. It looks like a non sequitur. It talks about parents, the fathers and mothers, and then it says, by truth. 3,000 years before psychiatry, before psychoanalysis, before we understood the dynamics of the family, this advice was advice to us about being parents. Buy the truth. Pay the price to know the truth. Don't turn away from it. It's costly and it requires work, but don't shortchange it. Don't sell it out. Press into the pain, press into the wounds, press into the truth about the shortcomings and the failings and the wounds that were handed to you because you were raised by imperfect parents. Get all of the resources you can, wisdom and instruction and insight. Get all of the resources you can to understand who you are and why you are, so that you can break the chain. So that you don't pay forward into your children's life those same wounds. But you know the beauty of it? The beauty of it is that if they see you forgiving, if they see you be gracious, if they follow your example of how you can say, I am who I am because of the strengths and the weaknesses of my parents, and I am thankful for them, they will learn how to be thankful for our strengths and weaknesses. Not because we tell them to do it, but because they watch us do it. Parenting is about modeling. Parenting is about breaking the chain. You want to be a great father, be a great son. You want to be a great mother, be a great daughter. You want to be a great parent, be a great child. For some of us, that means we got work to do. We got work to do about our own souls and about how we are who we are, and how the shortcomings of our parents worked for us and against us, and how their woundedness rubbed off on us, and understanding how to do that, making things right with them. Even if they're long gone, being able to grant them the grace and the forgiveness to say, I understand what was put on you, and you didn't mean to put it on me, but I don't want to put it on my children. Isn't that amazing? Isn't that amazing that to be a great parent, our responsibility is to be a great child? And there's one more thing about this. One more thing. And that's because our responsibility as parents is to demonstrate for our children what it means to be children, not of imperfect human parents, but children of God, children of a perfect Father. Proverbs 23:22, where it says, listen to your father who gave you life, is not just talking about our biological fathers. It's talking about listen to your perfect Father, your heavenly Father. Listen to him. Hear what God has to say to you and about you, because he is ultimately our perfect Father. And for those of us who are dads, we are the primary experience of the character of God that our children will ever have. You think about how you think about God. And most of us think of God in terms of our experiences that were shaped by our own fathers. If you have a father who was authoritarian and a disciplinarian and had rigid standards, it is not hard for you to imagine that God is also one who has rigid standards and high expectations and is a disciplinarian. You may have a harder time picturing God as loving and caring and gracious. If you had a father who had contractual relationships with you, who only gave you approval when you performed at a high level, who criticized you when you underperformed, then you project that onto God. And we primarily understand God as conditional, and we have a hard time understanding the unconditional love of God. If you had a father who was angry all the time and took out his anger on his family, then you imagine God very easily as a wrathful God, as a God with great anger who you don't want to piss off. even if we have loving parents. They are showing us, primarily our fathers are showing us, what grace and what love is supposed to look like. And that's what we are supposed to do as dads. We're ultimately supposed to love our Father, not just our earthly Father, but our Father who is in heaven, and model that for our children. What I learned this week, what I found through my study of the book of Proverbs, was that the Proverbs didn't have much to say in terms of instruction to parents. And that's somewhat disappointing to us, because we'd like to have a checklist. Wouldn't it be great if there was a 10-point checklist for parenting? Do these 10 things and your kids will be awesome. Just get these things right. If there was a handbook, a manual that we could read that said, okay, when your kid does this, you do this, kind of like a flow chart of it. They do this, they do this. I mean, that's why Dr. Spock sold billions of copies of his child raising book, because we long for those instructions. But parenting is an art, not a science. And parenting really isn't actually parenting at all. Parenting is just modeling what it means to be a good son and a good daughter, what it means to honor our mother and our father. And this is how we become wise parents. So when we see a dad who gets it right, it's a miracle. It is a rarity. Because we as men, as a gender, have an infinite capacity for stupid. We just do. We don't have to learn it. We don't have to seek it. It finds us. You want an illustration? Let me tell you one of my favorite stories about a guy named Larry Walters. Larry Walters had a dream. Larry Walters wanted to be a pilot. He wanted to fly. But one thing led to another, and he found himself in his mid-30s in a dead-end job as a truck driver in Los Angeles. But he still had a dream of flying. So Larry came up with a plan. He would go to an Army surplus store, and by forging an invoice from a movie studio, he was able to purchase 45 Army surplus weather balloons. And through a contract with a helium company, he was able to fill all of those weather balloons with 33 cubic feet of helium. He decided then to tether those 45 Army surplus weather balloons to what he described as an extremely comfortable Sears lawn chair. And in the backyard on July the 2nd, 1992, of his girlfriend's San Pedro home, Larry Walters inflated his 45 balloons, tied them to his extremely comfortable Sears lawn chair, weighed it down with some ballast, and attached a cooler to it, into which he put sandwiches and a 6-pack of Miller Lite. He strapped himself into the lawn chair that was anchored to the bumper of his Jeep parked in his girlfriend's backyard, and imagined that when they released the cord from the Jeep, that he would leisurely float to about 100 feet over his neighborhood, and he would float there for a few hours. He brought a pellet gun to shoot the balloons so he could descend comfortably. And he would float above his friends and neighbors, waving at them, eating his sandwiches, and drinking his Miller Lite. Unfortunately, when they cut the rope that tethered the balloons to the Jeep and the lawn chair, Larry didn't leisurely ascend to 100 feet in the air. He didn't ascend to 1,000 feet in the air. Larry ascended like he was shot out of a cannon. Not to 100 feet, not to 1,000 feet, but to 16,000 feet in the air. Now, because of the rapid ascent, and because Larry could see that he was 3 miles above the earth, he decided that the pellet gun was not a good idea. Because if he accidentally unbalanced the load, he would be hanging from a very comfortable Sears lawn chair 3 miles in the air. So he decided to ride it out for 14 hours. In fact, Larry in his lawn chair drifted into the primary approach pattern for Long Beach International Airport. And he was reported by a number of commercial airline pilots on approach. Can you imagine that conversation? Long Beach Control, This is American 247. We want to report off at about 16,000 feet, man in a lawn chair eating sandwiches and drinking beer. Can you confirm? And Long Beach Control would come back, affirmative. He floated for 14 hours, and as the day came to a close and the sun began to set, he was drifting toward the Pacific Ocean, and he knew this would not end well. So he finally got up the nerve to shoot out a number of his balloons, and the lawn chair did, in fact, descend gracefully until it got entangled in a power line in the center of Long Beach, blacking the city out for 20 minutes. When he finally reached the ground unhurt, the Long Beach police were waiting, and the FAA, who had hoped to see a copy of his pilot's license so they could revoke it. But he didn't have one, so they decided that they would file charges against him for operating a non-certified aircraft in a restricted airspace, and they fined him $14,000. A reporter later interviewed Larry, giving him the name Lawn Chair Larry, and asking him, why? Why would you come up with a plan like this? And Larry, not wanting to be a total idiot, looked at the reporter with a straight face and said, a guy can't just sit around, can he? When we see a dad get it right, it is an anomaly of nature. It is a miracle. And while there are some people who say you can't fix stupid, I believe that we can. That if we're willing to wise up, we can press into that inclination to do stupid things. And that if we're willing to wise up as fathers, we can do things that are worth celebrating. So today, I'd like for us all to applaud for the dads who get it right and wish them a happy Father's Day.